Bonjour tous amis. Welcome to this episode, or actually I should say the Lunch and Learn session together with Roland. I met Roland some time ago at lunch, and I have to say there are only a few people that I can share the amount of passion with, the amount of shore power passion with, and one of them is Roland. We bonded, you could say, over shore power and the things that we did and are doing to accelerate the use of shore power, especially for larger vessels now and in the future. So today is going to be more of a discussion,
or yeah, perfect. Yeah, absolutely.
A talk about the sticks and the carrots approach for shore
Absolutely.
power.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, really happy to be there. So thanks, Vincent, for this invitation. Thanks for meeting all of you remotely. But Vincent and I chose Willemstad as a location. Willemstad is leisure, so it's a yachthaven for leisure boats, for sailing, and for motorboats. And who knows, soon for electric powered vessels. But we'll talk about it if you don't mind. I'd like to as well not just illustrate electricity for very large vessels, but as well look at the trend now in terms of clean or zero emission sailing, including leisure, including works, and other topics that will be important over the years. As all of you know, being in one of those yachthavens, one of those ports, leisure ports here in Willemstad, electrification for vessels is not new. You've got lots of it here. We've got, Valstrom all along the quay. It's basically for keeping the fridge. The Coca-Cola is fresh.
It's cold.
It's keeping the fridge, working and keeping the batteries going. So the concept of electrification for vessels is not new. It's been there for many of years. What we talked about and what I enjoyed exchanging with you, Vincent, is one is I followed what you did with the Herema project with passion, and I thought that was exactly the way to do things, and that's why we connected. But second of all is perhaps by way of introducing myself, is I've worked for an American company called General Electric, and I was responsible for a region many years ago. It was in 2008. I became responsible for the activities of GE here in this region, the Benelux region. Mm-hmm. And very quickly, within an American company of this size, you're asked to sort of create a brand or create a value of what you bring to the company. And here, this part of the world, our part of the world, whether it's Belgium or even a bit lower, the Belgians, or here the Dutch, we are about sea. We're about the connection between land and sea, and therefore we have 10 substantial ports. We have the largest ports in Europe, Rotterdam, and of course Antwerp, not trailing far behind. So everything to do with water and ships, it's logical you do it here. It's logical you invent it here. So this is where we, as an American company at the time, put the focus. And General Electric is about electricity, and we installed in 2008. I cut the ribbon of the shore power installation. This was for inland vessels, shore power installation in Walhaven in Rotterdam. So it gives you an impression that I've been dealing with this topic for quite some years now.
That's a long time. Yeah.
But there's been a sort of time of how would I say, we fell out of love with the topic within a commercial entity, and I'll explain why. Because we're going to be talking about the stick and the carrot. But when we installed this inland capability years ago, this was on behalf of Eneco.
Also.
And part of the consortium was Eneco, was Jules, and Stedin, right? Those three were in 2008. Some of you may remember, still one big company.
Yeah.
This was before these electricity companies, these utilities were asked to demerge. And so the collaboration was strong. We were the technology provider, so we just responded as a big technology partner. We responded to a request for proposal. So Eneco came to us and say, give us the technology so that we can transfer electricity production onto the users.
Yeah.
So this was the principle years ago. In doing this, we set up as a corporation. We set up a partnership with the Port of Rotterdam Authority. This was at the time with people like Hans Smits and Tessa Mensen, who were part of the leadership. And we said we need to innovate in the port, and shore power was one of the topics. Very quickly, what I discovered and what was the foundation for working with this association that we set up is the Port Authority wasn't going to send us a purchase order. So we worked closely with an authority who was mandated or obliged or was talking about shore power, but they were never the end customer for technology companies. We would not get an order. We would not get a purchase order from the Port Authority. We would get it from Eneco or from an integrator, from the traditional way of doing business. And this was key as well in understanding why there's been such a slow pace in implementation. Now, this is the key topic: slow pace. So we're in 2022, and a couple of years ago, when I left GE, I worked together with Eneco, and we worked in France, and we visited a number of ports because this was all about. It's all about energy, renewable energy, and Eneco is about renewable energy. Eneco is strong in offshore wind, and they asked me to help them in the French market. This was Dunkerque for the offshore wind park and the offshore wind tender. This was together with Van Oort. I don't know if our friends here on the webinar are Dutch or English, but if they're Dutch, they will know the Van Oort company. We had the Mitsubishi company part of the consortium, and Boralex, which is a French-Canadian company, and we were bidding for the Dunkerque project, 600 megawatt. And very quickly, this was the time when you, Vincent, and Coach Jan van Brouwershaven and Eneco worked together on delivering the facility here in the Cullen Canal. And what struck me is suddenly this topic of shore power came back to the fore for two reasons. First, we noted that as part of large energy tenders, offshore energy or renewable tenders, this was a great segue to what you call local content. It was a way to go and see the mayor. It was a way to go and see the Port Authority and say, hi, we're Eneco, and by the way, we build shore power, so we help you as a public figure or as a port authority in delivering sustainability, not just offshore, but as well and this is in lobbying terms, so we were lobbying, so in lobbying terms of great value was the ability to say, look, we're going to connect shore power here, so when you've got a crew transfer vessel, a CTV, or whatever sort of shipping, sailing to the park, it'll be done with batteries or that sort of thing. This we noticed was a substantially differentiator for Eneco in this project. We managed to convince a lot of people, and this took us to many ports across France. But it raised the topic of shore power again. The fact that, remember, I installed in 2008, and Vincent and Eneco and Herema delivered it in 2022. So you can see the gap between the two. It was tremendous. It takes far too long. It's far too late and far too long to deliver these sort of solutions. So I started to ask around, and I actually didn't know Vincent yet, but he confirmed it later. And really, the reason the reason suddenly you had a deal, you had a project, is because the energy producer, Eneco, was talking directly to the energy user, Herema. And this is a commercial relationship all of us around the table here, all of us know perfectly, because when we build a house or we need electricity at the home, we talk directly to the energy producer. Of course. And we're the energy user. And then we sign a contract and boom, it gets done. So I started to wonder why these port authorities always mingled in somehow. Fundamentally, shore power should be someone who produces the electricity talking to someone who uses the electricity. And that should lead to a commercial opportunity. But then I talked to those parties, and we kept coming back to the idea that the installation of the technology, it's not a problem. It's there. We have the technology.
For a long time.
It's been there for a long time, exactly. The knowledge, the expertise is there. The integration capability is there. The willingness, let's get back to that when we talk about a stick and a carrot.
Especially sticks.
The willingness is of course going to be a big topic, and then you have the who needs to do what. And for me, I noticed once again that a port authority has a role to play, but was playing the wrong role. They were asked to be shore power developers by politicians, by a number of players. So you're a politician. I'm going to use an expression that I don't know if you guys know, and we'll have a question. It's called the dog is a cat argument. Have you guys ever come across this? The dog is a cat argument. I'll see if you nod, just to check if you're paying attention.
Yeah.
The dog is a cat argument. It's a very, very well used political tool. A dog has 4 legs. A cat has 4 legs. Therefore, a dog is a cat. And that was the argument. A port authority is dealing with a port.
Yeah.
A port authority is there. Well, let them install onshore power supply. And suddenly you realize that the question asked was not the right question. The authority isn't the one who's going to build the facility. And that's what we've seen in most ports across Europe, is what basically has been the how would you say, incompatibility that has led to such slow pace in installations, because the technology is there, the ability to build it is there, the willingness. So I spoke to the head of new builds at Boskalis, right?
Yeah.
And I said, are you installing shore power? And he said, on the new builds. And he said, I could, but why should I?
What, really?
Yeah. I said, well, is it difficult? He said, no, on new builds it's very simple to do. Yeah. So I said, and on retrofit, yeah. And I found someone whose questioning wasn't about the willingness to install it or the capacity to install it. His question was, is there availability of the technology? Which the answer is, of course, no. And the second one is, if it costs more than fuel, what's my incentive to do it?
Yeah.
And that's where you come to the stick and the carrot, and the concept of the carrot and the stick and that sort of thing. So this is where the association, we realize that, hold on, there's 2 things that we need to set, in our view, in the correct manner. The first one is, it needs to be the right team working at the right time. And 2, we need to find a mechanism, and that will come through lobbying. Yeah. We need to find a mechanism, stick and carrot. So stick, I'm not hugely in favor, and hopefully we'll talk about it a bit later. And the carrot would be subsidy, government funding and that sort of things.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know, Vincent, and if the audience knows, but the Dutch government has announced 150 million euros towards onshore power supply in the Netherlands, 50 million a year from 2022. This money, the Port Authority, being a quasi authority, so a quasi government system, the Port Authority knows exactly how to apply for this.
Yeah.
But if you are coater, or you're a smaller ship operator, or you have a ship sailing in PS, how do you do that?
No problem.
And that's where it becomes important to create that dynamic between the 3 parties: the energy producer, who sees a benefit in selling electricity, the energy user, who's quite willing, as long as it doesn't cost more, to install, and therefore the authority, who could say, listen, we need a couple of million, or 3 million, or 4 million, or 5 million, to make this business case positive. We're going to help you in getting it.
Yeah.
And that's what I think, Vincent, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's what made your project successful, is that everybody did their own job effectively.
Yeah,
did I see that correctly?
It was exactly that dynamic.
Yeah. So you got the commercial deal between those who produce the electricity and those who use it. That's a commercial deal. But that commercial deal may be negative, may be uninteresting. And that's where you need the help of others to supplement with funding. Yeah. So that was the principle. And that's the principle of the association we set up, is really to lobby aggressively to set the tone.
So that's a lot to think about. In terms of then maybe carrots. First. There are probably other kinds of subsidy. Is subsidy the only tool or the only carrot you can use, or what are you thinking about also as a EOPSA?
No, we see. Look, I make a correlation, and again, I'll let it in discussion later. But I make a direct the renewables industry, the Enecos, the EDFs, ENGIEs, all the big companies, but as well the oil and gas companies, the work we do around renewable energy. If today you're building an onshore wind park, I'll come back to Holland in a moment. In France, you can expect between 30 and 50% subsidy to make your project, to get your project off the ground. It's called a contract for difference. So there's a specific and today, so the idea of incentivizing an industry to get it to grow and to get it to be, where the politician want it, is a very recognized tool. You've got it in cars, you've got it in airplanes, you've got it pharma, biopharma. The concept of helping with a carrot, so an incentive, a financial support, is a totally accepted tool in European legislation and national legislation, even local legislation. So the fundamental of that exists, and that's what we're correlating it to. We're saying if you were able to give so much money to the offshore wind industry, what are you waiting for to subsidize shore power in the contract for this difference or feed-in tariff?
And that 150 million, that's simply, here's money, go play with it. Who's it for? Ship owners?
Now, I have to be honest, I didn't go into the detail of the legislation, but fundamentally, yes, it is. This is what we've reserved. This is a pot to which you can apply for your project. So you have a project, come to us, and we'll look at the business case and we'll help you.
Yeah.
Okay, but 150 million, if you were to be serious about switching off engines in port environments, you remember, and I don't know if our friends here on the round table know, but we've got what is it, between 50 and 60,000 ship calls per year in Rotterdam. Okay. Of these, you've got monthly, I think twice monthly, a cruise liner coming to the cruise terminal.
The big ones.
The big ones. So the amount of the potential of electricity deals. So the potential of electricity you could sell to these guys is massive.
It is
massive.
Enormous,
so you wonder, why is Eneco not jumping on this? Why aren't they all over this? They were, if you look at their strategy in Holland, because it's commercially viable. There's a subsidy for it. So shore power should have the same treatment.
Maybe can you put it in perspective? What kind of electricity we talk about? Maybe we can put it for the viewer in perspective.
I think what you so for leisure, it's of course low voltage, but once you get into the big ships, I think it's 24 megawatt. 24 megawatt is a substantial amount of electricity. It's equal to a small size refinery. It's equal to, it's substantial amount of electricity.
I think it's more than Willemstad here.
Right. So it's a city, effectively.
A small village.
For again, these volumes are totally attractive to NG, Alliander, all the big players who produce electricity. So there's no point in putting, coal-fired electricity into a, if you're gonna generate electricity from a coal-fired plant. So the money, there's a lobby position, should be equal to the feed-in tariffs mechanism that we had. So the larger the size, the larger the feed-in concept you can get, and of course the ferries and that sort of thing, which is in Hoek van Holland Stena lines.
Yeah. Very well.
They have two connections there. They've got a transformer. So again, the technology is there. The willingness is there. And then you've got a few elements that we think need to be addressed. Interesting. Today, negotiated in Brussels. These will be decrees, so these will be transferred to national governments, and national governments will apply which normal way of legislating across Europe. So the first is the alternative fuel directive, and the second one is Fit for 55. EU maritime. I've got a blank. It's going to come back to me. EU maritime. So those two texts are now being developed. In the AFIR, the alternative fuel, the recommendation from legislators today is to give a stick, so to say you must shore connection unit in your port by 2030.
One. For
And
entire Rotterdam.
and
for example.
this must be, yes, and this must be, right, for vessels that stay longer than X or bigger than Y.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
there's a thing. So what we're saying is that this is a sort of stick. There's a sort of obligation. But the fundamental behind that is that if you oblige, and we've seen that this type of technology, you're always going to end up with we'll install it and then say, look how wonderful we did. Put it on the brochure, and everybody will be happy and feel extreme. I have to come back to the offshore wind industry.
Yeah.
So the offshore wind industry about 20 years ago was in its infancy, was beginning, and I would even go further. 30 years ago, it was already, people were talking about the first parks were being developed. Arklow in the UK was a General Electric park, and everybody was losing money on this thing. Everybody who was looking at this was, by definition, going to lose a hell of a lot of money. So that's where the lobby started, and the concept of supporting this type of technology started. So the first park in Holland, this was done by Eneco. So Amalia Park, I think, was the first one, the very first one.
Or the offshore, you mean?
Yeah, offshore.
Oh, yeah.
So that one got 185 euros a megawatt as subsidy. So,
Really?
So basically you got, and still today gets the same amount. So
That's
20 years later, it's still turning and still gets the same amount of subsidy. So the amount of subsidy. But what did you see? Well, we started about 20 years ago. Today, we're at 80 gigawatt in sea, probably 90 gigawatt in sea, and we're going to 450 just in this part of the world. 450 gigawatt of offshore wind capability.
Yeah.
You see innovation, new technology, ship operators ordering new vessels, new jobs.
Yeah.
Marin, our friends from the study university here in Holland, sort of analyzing new ways of shipping, bringing staff, so crew transfer vessels. So the volume of the economy has suddenly become a $1 trillion economy, $1 trillion economy, as big as the oil and gas industry was at some stage. And this is thanks to the subsidy that governments were willing to pay.
Yeah.
What has become interesting is with the innovation created, the turbines have become so big, now you don't need the subsidy anymore. In Holland, actually, it's become negative subsidy.
Yeah.
Now, Shell and Eneco on the last project had to promise they would build a hydrogen capability if they wanted to win the park. So in other words, it's a negative subsidy now. They have to add something to win the contract. It's a zero envelope on subsidy, but they have to build something more for the legislators or those who decide on this to give them the contract. So we've gone into negative subsidy territory. Now we're at a full economy, a full system that works really well and really exciting for the industry. And we're proposing the same thing for onshore power supply.
So copy paste.
I have no other way of putting it. Copy paste. Yeah. Ideally, we're lobbying, and we need your help to lobby. Everybody needs to help in the lobby game.
Well, speaking about everybody, I think it's time to also incorporate some of the audience. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute and ask them to Roland. Otherwise, we'll just continue with sticks and carrots. So I don't know if there are any at this moment.
Yeah, I have one question. Thank you, Roland and Vincent, for the very interesting discussion so far. Really enjoying it, as well as the background and the scenery you're in.
Thanks, Peter.
One thing, Roland, you mentioned is that the willingness is there. I think you were talking about the energy consumer part of the equation. My question to you is, looking at the maritime industry, where do you reckon this appetite or willingness firstly arises? Are these the big maritime players, or can they also be like smaller enterprises? What do you reckon are the, let's say, characteristics of the first movers from a customer perspective?
Interesting, because I want to react to your expression first movers. I think we're way past first movers. We see now of the full worldwide, 30% of my fleet has the ability to do shore power. We visit 700 ports around the world, and only 16 of those ports have shore power capability. So ports per year,
Yeah.
and of those 700 ports, only 16 have shore power.
Just shore power
For them, for their
for them.
vessels.
Okay,
Yeah.
but they have big vessels, but
60% of their vessels have shore power capability on board.
yeah, and only 16 ports to more than.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, yes and no. They'll choose the routes where they can go,
Yeah,
but they
okay,
choose
yeah,
their
yeah.
routes. That's the packages they offer to their customers.
Yeah.
But to come back to your question, I think what you see today is an increased realization that this can be done. This needs to be done. So who you see working on this is, if you want to talk the word pioneer, I've seen, for example, a businessman in the south of France in the Port de Sète. The Port de Sète is the little Venice of France. So it's got its canals. It's lovely. It's a lovely little port, and warmly recommend to visit it as you go down to Spain or whatever. Port de Sète, this business guy suddenly said, "Hey, let's do something." Okay, and they took a pilot vessel and they electrified it. So the pilot vessel, I think you know what it is, but it's a vessel that transports the pilot to the vessel and allows the pilot then to bring the large vessels into port.
Yeah.
So they electrified the pilot vessel. And you hear more and more of these initiatives. This is where I get so excited, is that you hear more and more, port cleaning vessels, those that have an arm and take the plastics out of ports. Those can be electrified. Yeah. You can go all the ways. And where you see the innovation, so in Holland, I'll take a prime example. Our friends, so the tug company Koter, had ordered 2 battery-powered tugs. And they're sailing now, so they're testing them now to see if you got the same thrust, the same capability, and same power, and how long you can use it. But what they realized is actually, the other day I was talking about power curves, and effectively they discovered completely different power curves than what they were used to.
Yeah,
they're starting to realize that actually their use of batteries is completely normal, and they can actually work with this. Now what they need is the ability to recharge or the ability to sort of connect quickly if they're between ships or whatever. Then of course you got the leisure industry, number of smaller companies. I myself am involved now with a company in the south of France called La Neva, building a electric propulsed vessel, so day boat, quite cool. So you sail for 4 hours at 50 knots.
I think that's another lunch alone right there.
It's really cool, and we're sitting on a nice historical vessel, and we will change this into an electrical vessel next year. So
Perfect.
So we're taking out the Volvo Penta and we're putting electrical propulsion. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
So fundamentally, I rebound somewhat on your word pioneer, because I think we're now we're more in the engineering phase. We've even passed the early follower stage. But what people keep on telling me is they're saying, show me the money. And that makes, to me, in my history for an American company, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Show me a positive business case. Yeah.
Maybe I can re-ask you the question, Peter. Are you sort of, okay, this maybe you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but are you looking for clients to sort of sell something to, like electricity or something else? Or is your question, who would I contact first if I was looking for shore power developments?
Well, so it's a general interest I have, because I'm currently active in the electrification of road transport and trucks. So I'm more focused on that side of the equation, which is also high power demand, but let's say all relative to compared to the maritime industry. But I have a background in shipbuilding. I used to work for Damen shipyards. And I think it's fascinating to combine the two, right? To combine. I'm currently actually working for Equins, which is part of the NG group. So combining those two worlds, I think, is hugely important. I'm not active again in that market segment now, but I'm interested to see if we can be of help to that industry as well. So I'm not in daily contact with potential customers in this industry, but I'm encouraged by your words that we've actually gone beyond that first stage of first movers. So something for me to take with me internally here.
Yeah, I think the reports are there. Carbon Trust, take any large, and they will tell you that there is a real market out there and a real capability. The question now is, so what? What do we do? Well, we've illustrated, and I'm glad you mentioned you work for Equans. I've worked last year on a commercial program for, this is my other company, for Tractable, part of the NG group, and this was a big topic in port electrification as a whole. So how do you engineer the full spectrum of a port? Because behind this demand from a vessel, you need, of course, the production, and that production needs to react. At the moment the vessel arrives, suddenly, boom, you need 10 megawatt.
Yeah.
So you need the technology, but you need the digital capability as well, and that it's all there. It's all existing. There's nobody saying that it's impossible. On the contrary, it's very possible. So you're gonna have to solve, but it needs a more holistic approach to electricity in a port environment, and that's where the Equans or the Tractables or those with engineering background, the capability to calculate the pressures of electricity in a massive industrial environment have so much to bring as capability.
Yeah.
In terms of development, of course, batteries is the biggest topic. We're even talking, and at the conference we're organizing in 2 weeks' time in Cherbourg, we will have maybe some of you have come across. This is for the leisure industry. Aqua Superpower.
No.
So cool. Aqua Superpower were the guys who set up ChargePoint. Right?
Yeah.
And when they sold it for a hell of a lot of money, they decided to start again, but this time
new hobby
in the maritime segment, in the leisure segment. And right they are. The idea that you will go to medium voltage and high speed recharging of batteries on vessels. You may, and this is where the stick and carrot comes back, Vincent. Amsterdam has announced, and I'm making small. Amsterdam has announced 2025 for the beginning of zero emission. So from 2025, you will not be able to register a thermal propulsed vessel in Amsterdam anymore. You're going to have to sail on zero emission. What that means, we'll figure it out. But because it could be hydrogen. But this shows that politicians really are paying attention to this. And this is my reaction to you, is that we're no longer in pioneering. The politicians are well aware.
Yeah.
What we need to be careful of is the dogs and cat argument for a politician. Yeah. Politicians need to feel that, one, we need the subsidy, and two, don't talk to port authorities, talk to energy companies.
Yeah.
Motivate energy companies to install more of the capability.
The ones who will make the money.
Correct.
Speaking about the ones who make the money, then the next step would be the ones who pay.
Correct.
And maybe some people in the audience might know more about this, but what, in my experience, I mean, sticks, carrots, those are incentives.
Correct.
But if a ship owner, what I hear, doesn't have to pay for its fuel because a client pays for it, then indeed, why bother with shore power? I've seen lots of ship owners who actually at places, and this is really unimaginable, key sites where you are obliged to use shore power, smaller inland vessels, only 50% does it. So even where it's obliged, and there's a stick, not a firm one, it's a pretty soft stick, I should say, but there's a stick, still ship owners don't do it, usually with the argument, why bother, it's too much of a hassle, I'm not even paying for the amount of energy, and if I have shore power, I have to pay for it. So there's also a mismatch in incentives there. So especially, well, my previous experience with Harema, of course, when ships are moored and they have to pay for their own fuel, it's a different kind of business case.
Sure.
But for these kinds of cases, how do you see us EOPSA challenging that?
So the position is if it's there, you're gonna have to be able to use it. But it's not there. So the argument still stands. There's not enough. So you can still say, well, here's my delightful excuse. But by the time the charging capability is there, the excuse is gone. So therefore, that's where legislation can help in basically forcing or promoting all that sort of thing. This is really where the market effectively auto-generates itself, and you've seen that again as many examples. Is when we lightened the fuel. Now I don't know how old everybody is around the table, but I still remember to drive my cars with leaded fuel, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly legislation came in and we were in unleaded fuels. And did it change my life? No, it didn't.
Yeah.
But there was no leaded fuel left, and that's it. Legislation had changed. And it's the same for this low sulfur fuel for vessels. So the legislation does help. By the time it's widely available, then in that case you can work on it.
Yeah.
But take in a parallel example as you just used, the concept of scrubbers.
Mm-hmm.
Many ports said we need to work on emissions, so let's force the installation of scrubbers.
Yeah.
So a lot of companies have installed scrubbers, and that's been a pretty negative experience for many vessel owners because they installed it, but fundamentally the results and the capability came out. Where the stick, where we stand as an association, we say the stick should be the tool that already exists today,
which is
polluter payer.
Okay. Yeah.
ETS.
Yeah.
Carbon system, right?
Yeah.
It is there. So why reinvent something else in obligation if you're not using electricity, renewable electricity? If you're not using it, no problem. You'll pay tax.
Yeah.
So there you have it. Yeah. Up to you. You don't want to connect? No, right? You're going to pay tax.
And that's already coming online.
Exactly. So the tool is there.
Can I ask something?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I was gone for a bit because the connection got lost and I couldn't connect. So I have no idea if you already discussed this. But my name is Sietse Nap. I've worked for 12 years for Capotec. And I was involved in the first shore power project in Stena Line in Hoek of Holland. And I think it's a very, very nice product, the whole shore power thing. But even if you oblige people to use shore power, as far as I remember, there is also the IAC, 85 blah, blah, blah commission talking about standardization of the connection. Because I know, for example, for container vessels, there is quite a standardization with a cable reel of the vessel. There's connection boxes in Los Angeles. They can also do this in Rotterdam and everywhere around the world. But for example, Stena Line also standardized their vessels with the 11 kV plug. But in the past, DFDS had completely different connections, or they don't have shore power. But it's very difficult to make shore power when every vessel has a different type of voltage on board, etc. Is that also something that EOPSA is taking into consideration, or are you involved in this?
Yes. The concept of standardization, by definition, has to be part of the lobby process. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I would argue. So we talked. Of course, you talked about the connection into the vessel. That's very relevant. You've got the converter topic. 60 hertz, 50 hertz.
Yeah.
The argument we do hold is the technology is there.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, I want to say, where's the problem? I get it that you should ideally, if you had a wonderful world and everybody was beautiful, that you have one type of Medicus type of plug, that the distribution on the vessel is identical. But fundamentally, can you hear us?
Yeah, you were a little bit. So it was. The sound wasn't really fluent.
So fundamentally, the answer is yes. Albeit that it's a question. We're checking the. Do you have enough bandwidth? Because I think there's a few people that have left.
Yeah.
It's getting slightly better now.
Yeah, the connection is there. Great, but now I think Sietse, you have some sort of.
It's my fault.
Let me see if this helps.
Can you hear us well?
Yeah. Now I can hear you better right now. Yeah.
Okay, we've got a bit of a return, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So fundamentally, yes, the plug, similar systems, similar technology, etc., etc. The only caveat I would give, and you must know this very well, so custom made.
Mm.
Yeah.
So there's a different electricity distribution, different usage model, different requirements. So Hirema maybe this time we'll be putting a lot of focus on crane operation and tomorrow on refrigeration. So So fundamentally, I'm more of the view that you ought to work with a multitude of technologies, but with the fundamental success being a reduced emission. So the volume of CO2 is what you get as a success.
No.
And then leave the technology companies to solve the technology items through innovation, which get funding, which gets support, through job creation, which gets support, and so on and so forth.
It's not really a technical issue, but more a money issue.
And you've heard me come back to that every time again. Was that clear, Sitzer?
Yeah. No, but I totally agree. I know it's all different vessels, but I was just wondering, it would make life maybe a little bit easier in the future when when you need less different types of plugs and sockets, etc. So it would make it easier for companies to switch over to shore power. But I mean, I think that we're only talking about seagoing vessels now, because the inland is all, I think, sea norm plugs and sockets, like let's say on the camping.
Yeah.
And leisure. Expect leisure to be really copied on car.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah, like smaller crafts.
If you check out Aqua Superpower, you'll see that they've chosen technology from American company Tritium, and they do just the traditional Manicus, whatever it's called, the C class,
form.
So yeah, absolutely. I wanted to sort of give another and reacting to Sitzer having worked on Sitzer having worked for Cavotec and worked on the Hoek van Holland project. So a big topic for the association is what we call reciprocity. So we feel it's strange, and I'm using mild words, strange for Stena Lines to have a shore connection in Hoek van Holland, but not in Felixstowe on the other side, or Dover where they sail to. So we push, and again, this is as well a lobby position of an association. We push aggressively for reciprocity. So working along routes. European legislation has given us the ability to do multiple country tendering processes. So in other words, two ports could get together and say, we're going to create one tender package for a shipping route.
Yes.
So not two tenders, two bonds, two this, to that, but one tender for one line. So DFDS, Stena Lines, all these guys, they all do routes, repeated routes. And now those ports would get together and can, under European legislation, tender together. So that comes back to what Sitzer says, is then you have, fundamentally, standardization, automatic standardization, because you'd have the same system. Now, it's not totally true, because you have different electricity grids and blah, blah, but again, it can be solved.
Technology supplier.
It's solvable. It's solvable with the technology we have today.
Any more questions, Stefan? Do you have any, or Sitzer, maybe you still have a few?
Maybe I have a question indeed, Roland. Talking about the business case, where do you see the low-hanging fruit? Is that ports collaborating together and making a initiative that they have shore power, or do you think a certain vessel type will get used to shore power and will start using it? What's your opinion about that?
So vessel type is a given. Vessel type is a given. That's the low-hanging fruit today. So
what do you mean?
So every new, I'll give you a cruise liner that comes out today, every new cruise liner that's being produced now, and we're talking about 70 that are currently being built, will have shore power. Okay, that's a given. So the idea, the mechanism exists on board. If you look at our friends from Deme or Boscalis or that sort, increasingly they're preparing their electrical distribution to allow for shore power. Right, so you see this on dredging vessels, on large vessels that have waiting times or winter waiting times, etc., where it gets interesting.
Exactly.
So when you talk about low-hanging fruit, if I were an energy company, I would say low-hanging fruit is cruise liners. That's where you sell the most amount of electricity, and they come most regularly.
Of course.
Where I would do a deal as well is terminals. But this Stefan, brings us to a slightly different topic. This brings us to the topic of what we call the microgrid.
Yeah.
Why? So we had discussions at the time, and it's if you look in Rotterdam, they've done it. It's absolutely fascinating. Our friends from Maersk Line, right? They own APM terminals. So it was an easy discussion to hold. They said, look, if we're going to do shore power, if we're going to we're going to talk about everything. The whole terminal. So the reefer capability, so the refrigerated container capability. We're going to talk about the tractor tugs, which we want to be electric. The cranes need to be electric. So suddenly they looked in a holistic way at building electricity on their site.
That's extremely attractive to a supplier of energy.
Correct. And to our friends from, I forgot his first name, from Equans, who now left. Peter from Equans. For the engineering world, for the installation, for the maintenance world, this is what Stefan, what you call the low-hanging fruit. So when you start talking about a holistic approach to the terminal, and today electrified tractor tugs, it's normal, it exists. Electrical cranes, again, it's normal, it exists. So you could approach it as a general. And I've seen more utilities now working in that field and say, can I put charging station on your site? Yeah. Can I put solar panels on your roof? Sure. So that's where I would call it the low hanging fruit, is when you go one step further. You basically discuss with your customer a full terminal approach.
And maybe adding to that, I think that is also really interesting one, because then you have a big consumer and you can also interchange the electricity for several things that you have on site. What do you think is the main thing that is holding them back? Because is it maybe the grid, or why aren't they starting and building those things?
So those who are in a mindset of sustainability are doing it. So that's why Herema built the facility. Those who are still fighting with the last penny will say not now, and they'll find all the excuses to do it. We as an association are successful because we feel that one of the roadblocks today is a misunderstanding of who should do what.
Yeah, okay.
We ask port authorities to get on with it, but port authorities write wonderful reports.
They do.
They put great teams together, Magpie, Ealing, and that sort of things.
Oh.
But then suddenly you're 3 years later and still nothing has happened. So our argument is build the carrot and the stick for the right industry, which is the energy industry, the energy producer and the energy consumer, and you will see this will speed up. Like the cars, like the onshore wind, like the solar, like the offshore wind industry have suddenly, sped up.
Yeah.
So you're asking, why does it go slowly? Well, it's going slowly because the wrong people are talking about topics they fundamentally are not made to discuss. It's not their job.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Stefan, I don't know if you worked with Vincent, but Vincent worked with Floor Schippers at the Port Authority of Rotterdam. She's she's a very talented lady. Two, she's a very commercially minded lady, but she has no weapons to deliver this. It's not her job to deliver the system. Right? She has some money she can bring, but she has no. She won't send Siemens a purchase order.
Exactly.
So the thing is that we need to have some focus for the stick and form the stick in according to the focus that you want to have.
Yeah, I like that approach. Yeah, focus, absolutely. Yeah. Good point.
Okay.
So that's it. And frankly, as an association, we do push for electrification at a broader level. So it's not just the big ships. It's as I said, we're looking at the small day boats as well. And as I said, I'm working for Laneva today, which is coming up soon with a big announcement, which we'll do on another luncheon. But it is about electrification of leisure industry, and it makes a ton of sense to do so.
Yeah. I'm hearing more signals that people are skipping hybridization, etc. Simply go straight electric because, well, just like with cars,
technology is there.
Yeah. Right. Well, before we all started, Roland, you mentioned something about not having white wine on board.
That's
which is
terrible.
A little bit of a faux pas. So, just to be sure, here's a little gift.
Oh, wow.
That's for you. It doesn't have to be open right now or at this time, but thanks for hosting or being present, and enjoy the little white wine. This is actually a real one from Bourgogne, and we got it from a very nice old lady who was, I think, in her 80s or 90s, who almost didn't get up the stairs from the little wine cellar. But she made it out with this wine.
Listen, I really appreciate and really enjoy the conversation. And of course, don't hesitate to share, of course, what we're talking about, because I think we've had some tremendous questions. I confirm that thanks to Shore Power, I will put this in a fridge that is cold, and hopefully we'll drink it later when we come back.
Perfect.
So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you too. All right.